A piercing scream broke the quiet afternoon of April 27, 1993. While fishing with her father at a lonely pond in LaPorte, Indiana, a young girl named Tracy saw a shoe floating on the water. Curious, she leaned closer only to realize it was attached to a body held down under the water by heavy logs. Police rushed to the scene. When the body was pulled from the dark water, 2 rings were still on its left hand. One was carved with the words Matt Elsa. The other said Rayna Rison. There was no doubt it was Rayna Rison, the 16-year-old girl who had disappeared exactly 1 month earlier. The feeling of safety in LaPorte was destroyed forever. The small hope that she had simply run away disappeared with that horrible discovery. For Rayna's family, finding her body reopened wounds that had never healed. It also brought to light a darker secret. Rayna had been sexually abused by a family member since she was 11. For 2 decades, the murder of Rayna Rison would haunt Indiana, a brutal reminder of a beautiful life cut far too short. Before we continue this shocking story, take a second to hit subscribe and like this video. Your support helps bring these forgotten stories to light, and the algorithm gods will make sure you don't miss any future uploads. LaPorte, Indiana, in 1993 was a town that lived by quiet rhythms, a place where time seemed to move a little slower, keeping the comforting hum of small-town America. 70 miles southeast of Chicago's busy streets, its population of 20,000 had stayed mostly the same since the 1950s, proof of a steady way of life. Here, tree-lined streets led to the welcoming glow of mom-and-pop stores, the rich smell of coffee mixed with baking bread from local cafes. Children, their laughter echoing freely, chased each other on bikes until the streetlights turned on. Their parents rarely gave it a second thought. Doors were often left unlocked, a silent agreement of trust among neighbors who felt more like family. It was a safe place, a community so untouched by the harsh realities of the outside world that the idea of a local murder felt like a forgotten ghost story, one banished to history books, going back even before the notorious Belle Gunness in 1908. While 25,000 murders cast a dark shadow across the United States that year, LaPorte remained bathed in a false sense of lasting safety. Within this comforting bubble of normalcy lived Rayna Rison, born on May 6, 1976 to Ben and Karen. At 16, Rayna wasn't just good at everything. She attacked life with a joyful, almost fierce ambition. A sophomore at LaPorte High, her academic brilliance was matched only by her artistic spirit. The cornet, flute, and oboe weren't just instruments but extensions of her vibrant personality, filling the crisp Indiana air with melody as she marched with the school band. While many teenagers struggled with one job, Rayna juggled 3 part-time positions, each a careful stepping stone toward her single dream of becoming a veterinarian. Her favorite was at the Pine Lake Animal Hospital, affectionately known as the clinic by locals, where she cleaned kennels, fed hungry mouths, and walked the animals, imagining the soft fur of future patients in her hands. Friday, March 26, 1993, started with the promise of spring, a seemingly ordinary day that held an unseen edge. Rayna hurried through her final classes, the hum of her instruments still in her ears, her mind buzzing with a different kind of music, the excitement of a dinner date. Matt Elsa, her on-again, off-again boyfriend since the 6th grade, was waiting. Their relationship had seen its youthful twists and turns, but they were firmly on again, and Rayna's excitement was an unmistakable energy. Matt, also a sophomore, was well liked by her family, a steady presence in her often hectic world. She pictured the familiar, comforting routine, home to change, then the short familiar drive to the clinic for her 4 to 6 p.m. shift, followed by Matt's arrival. She dressed quickly, pulling on comfortable blue jeans, black shoes, and a sweatshirt. Over it, she slipped on Matt's black leather Letterman jacket, the name Elsa stitched boldly across the shoulders, a warm, touchable symbol of their renewed connection. It was a jacket she wore often, a comforting weight on her shoulders, a statement to the world. With a quick glance in the mirror, she grabbed her keys, her heart pounding with youthful eagerness, and headed out the door. Her tan Ford LTD roared to life, pulling away from the Rison home, its taillights disappearing into the quiet afternoon, carrying Rayna toward her dreams, and a fate no one in LaPorte could have ever imagined. As Friday evening deepened into night, the comfortable rhythms of LaPorte began to unravel for the Rison family. Matt Elsa, his heart pounding with youthful excitement for his dinner date, arrived at Rayna's door around 7 p.m. But instead of Rayna's familiar smile, he was met by Ben Rison's kind but furrowed brow. "She's not here, Matt," Ben said, a hint of confusion in his voice. "We thought she'd be back from the clinic by now. Come on in. Wait a bit." As the minutes stretched then into an hour, the easy conversation in the living room grew thin, replaced by a noticeable unease. Matt, unable to shake a growing prickle of worry, called the clinic only for the phone to ring out into empty silence. Where could she be? He wondered, a cold knot tightening in his stomach. He then drove his car, the engine an insistent thrum against his rising anxiety, to the animal hospital. He found Rayna's tan Ford LTD gone, the building dark and locked. A chilling void where her vibrant presence should have been. Returning to the Rison home, the air inside was thick with an unspoken dread. Ben and Karen, her mother, shared a look that spoke volumes. Rayna was carefully reliable, a creature of habit. To change plans without a word, especially for a date she'd looked forward to all week, was completely out of character. It simply wasn't Rayna. Ben, his voice tight, called Rayna's older sister Lori, nearly 10 years her senior, who lived across town with her husband Ray McCarty. Rayna sometimes spent time with them, but Lori confirmed they hadn't seen or heard from her. Around 10 p.m., Rayna's younger sister Wendy arrived home from the movies, stepping into an atmosphere so heavy it felt like a physical weight. The family's shared anxiety was a silent, suffocating presence. Ben and Wendy then made the agonizing trip to the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office, only to be met with a dismissive wave. "Look," a deputy said, leaning back in his chair with a sigh. 16-year-olds change their minds. She probably just went off with friends. Come back after 24 hours to file an official report. But for Ben and Karen, and for Matt, every passing second was a lifetime of terror. The following morning, Saturday, March 27th, the sun rose over LaPorte, but its light brought no comfort. Rayna's car remained missing. Her bed was unslept in, a cold, empty space that screamed of absence. Unsure where else to turn, Ben and Wendy began a desperate round of phone calls, reaching out to everyone they knew. The community, still operating on its bedrock of trust, responded with an outpouring of concern. A large search party quickly came together, proof of Rayna's bright spirit. Friends, family, and even her marching bandmates, their usual youthful energy now focused by a grim determination, carpooled across LaPorte. They distributed flyers with Rayna's smiling face to local businesses, each hand out a silent plea. Seeing the town mobilized, the police could no longer afford to remain detached. They issued a public appeal, asking for any information, any sighting of Rayna on the day of her disappearance. This plea resulted in 2 separate calls, both providing a hauntingly similar image: a car in the clinic's parking lot around 6 p.m. with 2 men in the front seats, and a girl matching Rayna's description standing outside. The girl, callers reported, appeared to be having what looked like a lover's quarrel with one of the men. Police, ever logical, initially focused on Matt, who had admitted to checking on Rayna at the clinic. They brought him in for questioning. He repeated his story, his voice strained with worry. He'd gone to the clinic, but there was no sign of Rayna or her car. The place was dark, locked. For now, police found no reason to doubt his genuine distress. "Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below. I'm always fascinated to see how far these stories travel and how they connect us across distances." The very next day, a new chilling detail emerged. A tipster reported seeing a tan Ford LTD, Rayna's car, parked on the side of a lonely stretch of County Road 209, miles northeast of the animal hospital. Deputy Timothy Shaw was sent to check. What he found confirmed the dread that had been growing in LaPorte's heart. Rayna's car sat unlocked, its keys still in the ignition, the driver's side door slightly open, as if someone had left in a hurry. Her purse lay on the passenger seat, a grim sign of a sudden departure, its contents spilled across the floor, the glove box open. Outside the driver's side, a broken hair clip offered a small, unsettling clue. The hood of the car was popped, suggesting a breakdown, but police knew Rayna would never have left her purse behind if she'd walked for help. "This isn't just a breakdown," Deputy Shaw muttered to himself, his gaze sweeping the desolate road. "This is a staged scene. When officers inspected under the hood, they found nothing wrong. The engine started instantly, and a mechanic later confirmed the car was in perfect working order. Someone had purposely made it appear as if Rayna had broken down, yet the scene offered no easy answers. There were no signs of a struggle, no broken glass, no DNA evidence. A search of the dense surrounding area produced nothing. Rayna's parents were baffled by the car's location. She would never take that road, Karen insisted, especially not on a foggy night, not when she was so excited to see Matt. The puzzle pieces refused to fit. Evidence technician Larry Mitchell conducted a thorough examination, his trained eye searching for any trace of violence, but found no DNA, no blood, no physical evidence of foul play. He did note one confusing detail: wet foliage and newspapers on the passenger side floor, as if a wet towel had been placed there, unusual given that it hadn't rained that night. The silence of the car was deafening, a new, unsettling layer to the mystery. A small glinting object in the open glove box caught an officer's eye, a school signet ring. For a brief moment, a fragile hope stirred among the investigators. Perhaps it was Matt's, a simple explanation for an otherwise grim discovery. But Matt quickly ended that hope. His own ring, he explained, had his name engraved clearly along the inside. The one in the glove box didn't. He hesitated before suggesting another possibility. The ring might belong to Jason Tibbs, a boy Rayna had once dated back in middle school, Jason Tibbs. The name carried a faint echo of the past, the kind that clings to small towns long after the people involved have moved on. He had been a brief chapter in Rayna's early life, a childhood crush she had long outgrown. Yet Jason had never truly let go. Matt, though he disliked Jason, had felt secure in his relationship with Rayna, a young love strong enough to weather Jason's persistent, often inappropriate attempts to win her back. Jason, a high school dropout with a minor criminal record, still nursed a fierce, almost obsessive desire for Rayna, bombarding her with love letters, begging her to leave Matt. Rayna, however, had always gently but firmly rejected him, valuing Matt's steady devotion and seeing Jason only as a relic of childhood, a friend to tolerate, sometimes even allowing him to visit her at the clinic for company. Now, the discovery of his ring, a misplaced relic in her glove box, introduced a fresh, unsettling layer of concern to Matt's already spiraling dread. Detectives quickly tracked down Jason Tibbs. He was cooperative, perhaps too eager. He explained the ring's presence with a believable but slightly odd story. He'd been helping Rayna with her car radio, and the ring, getting in the way, had been placed in the glove box for safekeeping. He even boasted of being one of the first volunteers in the search, driving around county roads with one of Rayna's bandmates the day after she vanished. His eagerness, however, didn't erase the cold questions in the detectives' minds. Where had Jason been on the night of Rayna's disappearance? Jason provided a complicated alibi. He claimed he'd been tutoring two younger girls, Jamie and Misty, in math and science at a mobile home park on Fail Road from 6 p.m. until 9 or 9:30 p.m. Afterward, his friend Chad picked him up for a game of fox hunting, a car-based chase game popular with local youths, which lasted until midnight. Then another friend, Scott, drove him to watch TV and play darts until 3 a.m. before he finally returned home to his waiting parents. Jamie and Misty, surprisingly, backed up the tutoring story. Chad, however, initially denied picking him up, only to change his story later, claiming Jason had told him to lie. Police, chalking it up to a teenager's unreliability or fear, didn't press the issue too hard. Other fox hunting participants remembered hearing Jason's voice on the radio, and Scott confirmed picking him up. Jason's alibi seemed to hold, yet a nagging unease persisted for the detectives. A high school dropout known for petty crime tutoring advanced subjects, and Fail Road, where he claimed to be, was disturbingly close to where Rayna's car was found. It was a story too neat, too detailed, yet riddled with small confusing wrinkles. The investigative net widened, bringing in Cheryl, Rayna's co-worker at the clinic. She told police she had left early that Friday, feeling unwell, leaving Rayna alone. Alone. The word echoed hollowly in the now tense LaPorte air. Meanwhile, another anonymous tip came in, reinforcing the initial sightings of a lover's quarrel. This caller also reported seeing a car with two men and a girl resembling Rayna arguing at the clinic around 6 p.m. Detectives wondered, who were these men? Had they followed her, or was it someone she knew? Someone who could harm her? They considered Matt and Jason but dismissed the idea of them being together in the same car. They were rivals, not friends. To sift through the suspects, police had Matt, Jason, and a third unnamed individual undergo polygraph tests. Matt and Jason passed, but the third person's test showed clear signs of deception. The detectives, tight-lipped, refused to release the name of this mysterious individual. But a new, unsettling question began to form in the troubled minds of LaPorte's investigators. Who was this other person, and what were they hiding? 6 days bled into an agonizing week, each passing hour dimming the hope that had clung so fiercely to LaPorte's hearts. The sun, once a source of comfort, now seemed to mock the Rison family, its warmth unable to thaw the cold dread that had settled in their home. Ben and Karen, their faces marked with sleepless worry, sat by the phone which remained stubbornly silent. The community, desperate for answers, saw their fear turn to clear anxiety. No longer was it merely about finding Rayna. It was about understanding the monstrous act that had shattered their illusion of safety. Police, with no major breakthroughs, made another public appeal, their voices strained with a weariness that mirrored the town's. "We have no major developments," Chief Gene Samuelson announced, Captain John Miller beside him, their expressions grim. But the Rison family, with the help of generous anonymous donors, has raised a $6,000 reward for any information. The Indiana State Police sent out a helicopter, its rotors chopping mournfully through the sky, a mechanical bird searching for a lost girl. Even the far-reaching show America's Most Wanted aired a segment on Rayna's disappearance, pushing her face, once filled with vibrant life, into homes across the nation. Then a new voice cut through the despair. An anonymous caller, prompted by the national broadcast, directed police to Fail Road, a winding county road about 6 miles south of where Rayna's car had been found. Officers raced to the location, their hearts pounding with a renewed grim hope. There, hanging from a low branch on a lonely tree, roughly 20 feet from the road, was a black leather jacket. Its discovery sent a jolt of recognition through the officers. Emblazoned across the shoulders was the name Elsa. It was Matt's Letterman jacket, Rayna's comforting symbol of their renewed love, now discarded like a forgotten secret. State troopers confirmed it hadn't been there the day before. Someone had purposely placed it, or perhaps thrown it from a passing car. This wasn't just a clue, it was a defiant message, a chilling piece of Rayna's story now left for the world to find. The discovery deepened the mystery, pulling the investigation in new, unsettling directions. A following press conference saw the reward pool swell further, a local bakery adding $5,000, and Charlie Finley, the former owner of the Oakland Athletics, contributing a staggering $25,000. The total, $36,000, was a desperate beacon, a town's collective plea for any scrap of truth. But a month passed. The porch light at the Rison home continued its lonely watch, a single, unwavering flame against the surrounding darkness. "She'll come home," Karen would whisper each night, her voice thin with exhaustion. "She has to." Another segment on America's Most Wanted aired, a haunting retelling of Rayna's vanishing, but still, the phone remained silent. Then, on April 27, 1993, 32 days after Rayna vanished, LaPorte was plunged into a new, unimaginable horror. A man and his 14-year-old daughter, Tracy, were fishing at a quiet pond just off Range Road, 2 miles outside town. Tracy, bored with her line, wandered along the reedy edge of the water. She spotted something dark, partially underwater, which she first mistook for a turtle. As she drew closer, her childish curiosity turned to a scream that tore through the calm afternoon. It was a shoe, attached to a foot, attached to a body. 2 logs, heavy and purposeful, were placed on its back, struggling to hold it beneath the surface. Tracy, frozen by the sight, stumbled back to her father, pointing a trembling finger. "Daddy," she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. "There's a person in the water." Dive team members arrived, their grim faces reflected in the dark water. They carefully pulled out the body, placing it onto a stretcher, the air heavy with unspoken grief. It was a woman, fully clothed in blue jeans and a sweatshirt consistent with Rayna's description. On her left hand, 2 rings glittered dully, One engraved Matt Elsa, the other Rayna Rison. There was no longer any room for doubt. It was Rayna. Dental records and an autopsy would soon confirm the devastating truth, but the community already knew. Rayna, the bright, ambitious girl with dreams of becoming a veterinarian, had been murdered. Her body, found in the murky depths of a pond on Range Road, shattered LaPorte's illusion of safety forever. The official confirmation of Rayna's identity, delivered with agonizing certainty by dental records and autopsy, plunged LaPorte into a collective grief and fear it had never known. The illusion was shattered. Rayna Rison, the spirited girl who represented the town's quiet hopes, was not just missing. She was gone, brutally murdered. The autopsy revealed the grim truth of her final moments: asphyxiation. She had been strangled with bare hands, a desperate, intimate act of violence. While no other obvious injuries marked her body, investigators guessed she might have been struck, perhaps knocked unconscious, before her breath was stolen. This wasn't a random act, a detective murmured to Captain Miller, his voice heavy. This was personal, passionate. LaPorte, a town that had rarely seen a murder, struggled to understand who among them could commit such a monstrous act against a girl so widely liked, so focused on building her future. For Ben and Karen, the world had broken. The funeral, held on May 1st at the Rolling Prairie United Methodist Church, was a sea of solemn faces. Hundreds came, their sorrow a palpable hum beneath the heavy organ music. Plainclothes police officers moved quietly among the mourners, their eyes scanning, searching for any flicker of suspicious behavior. They believed the killer was not a stranger, but someone Rayna knew, someone she might have trusted, enough to willingly join at the lonely spot where her car was later found. 6 weeks after Rayna's disappearance, as the raw edges of grief began to harden into a dull ache, a whisper, then a louder murmur reached the police. It concerned Ray McCarty, Lori's husband, Rayna's own brother-in-law. Ray, it turned out, was the previously undisclosed third person who had taken that polygraph test alongside Matt and Jason, and his results had clearly shown signs of deception. The detective's instincts, which had quietly regarded him with an unsettling wariness, now sharpened into active suspicion. Ray McCarty, a man whose presence in the Rison family circle had always carried a subtle, unspoken tension, was on probation. His sentence was scheduled to end in a matter of days. His past was not just a dark stain, but a horrifying scar on the family's history. His probation stemmed from a horrifying incident. When Rayna was 11 and he was 24 and married to Lori, he began sexually molesting her. This abuse lasted for 2 years and resulted in her pregnancy at age 13. Rayna underwent a termination procedure, and Ray was listed as the father on the official report. He threatened Rayna and her family, warning he would kill Rayna if they reported him to the police. Ray eventually pleaded guilty to a Class D felony of child molestation, receiving a 3-year suspended sentence and a requirement to complete counseling. But he never completed the counseling sessions. Despite this, Lori, in a complex and painful act of loyalty or forgiveness, had remained married to him, stating they were working on their marriage. Rayna's parents, in their own deeply conflicted way, had also given him their forgiveness for the past. Initially, when Rayna first disappeared, police had questioned all family members. Both Ray and Lori had given statements that they had not seen Rayna that fateful night. But as the investigation deepened, Ray's story began to shift. He later claimed he had been in South Bend, a neighboring city, at a pig farm collecting money, a route that eerily placed him along the general area of where Rayna's body would eventually be discovered. This change in alibi, given even before Rayna's body was found, immediately raised the police's suspicions. After the horrific discovery in the pond, those suspicions solidified into a cold, hard certainty for the investigators. For them, the path seemed clear. Ray McCarty, with his history of calculated cruelty, his shifting stories, and the dark stain of his past, became the prime suspect, a terrifying representation of the evil next door that LaPorte had once believed impossible. On May 7th, investigators, now fixated on Ray McCarty, secured a search warrant for his and Lori's house. Both of their cars were impounded, their metal shells hiding secrets that forensics might uncover. Inside their home, police found a small collection of weapons, a .44 Magnum revolver, 2 other firearms, and a stun gun. The discovery only deepened the dark portrait of McCarty that was forming in the detectives' minds. 4 days later, On May 11th, with forensic test results still pending, Ray McCarty took a startling voluntary step. He walked into the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office not to confess, but to change his alibi for a third time. That evening of March 26th, he claimed, had been spent looking at a house for sale on Warren Street between 5:40 and 5:45 p.m., a detail later backed up by a witness. From that spot, the Pine Lake Animal Hospital came into view, along with Rayna's familiar tan Ford LTD parked outside. The decision, he said, was only a quick check-in. Inside the clinic, Rayna was sweeping or mopping the entrance. When asked about Lori, she responded that she didn't know and urged him to leave, explaining she was about to go on a date. The exchange, brief and measured, lasted no more than 30 seconds before McCarty left. Why such a crucial detail had been kept hidden for so long remained unclear. His explanation unfolded as a tangled tale of marital problems. After that evening, he had picked up a female hitchhiker, driven her across state lines, and spent the night at a motel, all in a calculated effort to hide his cheating from Lori amid their so-called trust issues following past wrongdoings. The story reeked of deception, flimsy in its attempt to excuse the inconsistencies while offering no real account of his actions on the night Rayna vanished. During a police interview, Lori, initially a pillar of loyalty to her husband, let slip a disturbing detail. She stated that after Rayna's disappearance, Ray had asked her to vacuum the back of his car. The statement, a crack in her carefully built facade, was quickly taken back, but the seed of doubt was planted. When the lab reports finally came back on the impounded cars, however, they offered no final answers. There was no DNA evidence, no blood linking Ray to Rayna's case. Some animal blood, likely from his hunting activities, was found in the back of his car, but it offered no solid link to the murder. Though Ray McCarty remained the primary person of interest, the physical evidence directly tying him to Rayna's murder was stubbornly absent. The investigation, for all its intensity and mounting suspicion, began to go cold. Over a year passed. The case file gathered dust, and Rayna's ghost seemed to recede further into the agonizing silence. But as LaPorte grappled with the terrifying idea that Rayna's killer might walk among them, untouched by justice, a new bizarre chapter opened. In November 1994, over a year after Rayna's murder, Indiana State Police pulled over a plain van. Inside, they found Larry Hall, a man serving time for an unrelated attempted kidnapping. Hall, a man under watch by multiple jurisdictions, was known to travel throughout the Midwest for Civil War reenactments, a twisted schedule that left a trail of missing women in its wake. He was already a suspect in 2 attempted kidnappings in Illinois and the murder of Jessica Roach, whose body had been found just across the state line in Indiana. The search of Hall's van uncovered a disturbing collection: numerous newspaper clippings detailing the disappearances and murders of young women, some specifically about Rayna Rison. Then a chilling discovery: a prescription birth control pill bottle with a label carefully made out to R. Rison. Questioned about this, Hall, with a chillingly detached manner, confessed to killing Rayna Rison. "I've killed so many women," he claimed, his voice empty of emotion. "I can't keep track of them all." He then, just as casually, took back his confession, a pattern that would repeat itself several times. But for a desperate LaPorte, for investigators chasing shadows for too long, Larry Hall offered a terrifying yet possible alternative. Could the monster truly be a stranger? A passing evil that had merely passed through their unsuspecting town? The focus momentarily began to shift, offering a brief, unwelcome break from the gnawing fear that Rayna's killer was someone they knew. The chilling yet wildly inconsistent confession from Larry Hall sent a ripple of both terror and a strange, desperate hope through LaPorte. Could it be? Could the monster truly be an outsider, a passing evil whose path had merely crossed with their unsuspecting town? For Ben and Karen, it was a flicker of relief from the gnawing fear that Rayna's killer was someone they knew. Investigators, momentarily swayed by Hall's self-proclaimed reign of terror, dove into his shadowy world. They carefully traced his disturbing travel routes, aligning them with Civil War reenactments across the Midwest, building a horrifying picture of missing and murdered young women. Rayna, with her vibrant youth, fit his typical victim profile. For a time, the story of Ray McCarty, the familiar, unsettling figure, receded, overshadowed by the chilling image of a serial predator. Yet a stubborn inconsistency nagged at the investigators. Despite Hall's boasts, they could not place him in LaPorte on March 26, 1993, and Rayna's case stood apart. No signs of the sexual abuse or mutilation that were hallmarks of Hall's other brutal crimes. The birth control pill bottle, chillingly personalized with R. Rison, was exposed as a grotesque fantasy, a label Hall himself had carefully created. He reveled in the attention, feeding off it, but his claims regarding Rayna remained unproven. A chilling wish more than a concrete confession. Ultimately, Larry Hall confessed to the murder of Jessica Roach and the kidnapping and murder of 3 other women, sealing his fate with a life sentence without parole in June 1995. He was widely believed to have killed many more, perhaps 30 to 40 women, but Rayna Rison was not among those he could be firmly linked to. The brief unsettling detour into Larry Hall's monstrous world had provided no answers for Rayna. With Hall's case closed, the LaPorte investigators found themselves back where they started, the cold files of Rayna Rison staring back with renewed, frustrating emptiness. The focus, inevitably and grimly, returned to Ray McCarty. 5 long years had passed since Rayna's murder, each a testament to the slow, relentless grind of an investigation without easy answers. But detectives now felt they had painstakingly gathered enough circumstantial evidence to present to a grand jury. The weight of his shifting alibis, his deceptive polygraph results, and the haunting shadow of his past abuse seemed undeniable. The grand jury agreed, voting to indict McCarty. He was formally arrested and charged with Rayna Rison's murder. The news sent a jolt through the community, confirming the darkest fears some had harbored, while others clung to disbelief. McCarty, now facing the ultimate consequence, pleaded not guilty and was placed in jail awaiting trial. For 15 agonizing months during McCarty's imprisonment, LaPorte County welcomed a new prosecutor, Robert Beckman. Unburdened by the preceding years of frustration and raw emotion, Beckman carefully reviewed the mountain of evidence. His conclusion: insufficient basis for the indictment, no definite physical evidence, no smoking gun. In 1999, to the disbelief of many, Ray McCarty was released from jail. Karen Rison, though her heart ached for justice, publicly defended him. "We believe him," she told a local reporter, her voice firm despite the underlying tremor of pain. "We believe he's innocent." The family, in a complex and painful act of loyalty or perhaps denial, clung to the belief that the monster was still out there, that Ray was not him. For the Rison family, this was a devastating blow. The initial shock of McCarty's release gave way to a weary acceptance, but not surrender. The case, once again, went cold, receding into the records room, another unsolved mystery in a town that had hoped to finally lay its ghost to rest. Years bled into over a decade, the silence growing heavier. But for Ben and Karen, and for Lori and Wendy, Rayna was never forgotten. Her dreams, her vibrant laughter, her desire to heal animals, these memories fueled a quiet, unyielding fire, a promise to keep her story alive even as the world moved on. They refused to let Rayna Rison fade into obscurity. For 15 agonizing years, Rayna Rison's case remained a ghost in the records of LaPorte, a cold file gathering dust, a wound that refused to heal. For her family, the porch light at the Rison home, a defiant beacon against the decades of darkness, still burned each night, a silent, stubborn vow. Ben and Karen, their hair now streaked with gray, continued to share Rayna's story with anyone who would listen, ensuring her vibrant memory didn't fade into the background noise of time. They knew, with a certainty that went beyond evidence, that somewhere, the truth still lived. Then in May 2008, a phone call sliced through the silence of those forgotten years. Corrections Officer Martinez, during a routine inmate check at an Indiana correctional facility, noted Ricky Hammonds' unusual request. Hammonds, serving time for an unrelated murder, sought no deals, bypassing the usual snitch channels. "It's about the LaPorte girl, Rayna Rison," Martinez recorded. Martinez immediately flagged the unusual call for the Indiana State Police. Detectives Al Williamson of the Indiana State Police and Brett Airy of the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office received the notification. Williamson pulled the dusty Rison file. Airy reviewed Hammonds's own criminal history, searching for prior associations. They secured priority access to Hammonds, traveling to the correctional facility within hours. In the prison interview room, Ricky Hammonds appeared agitated. He described March 26, 1993. A terrified 14-year-old Ricky had snuck into his parents' barn to smoke a joint hiding in the rafters. From his perch, he watched a silver Buick belonging to his sister Jennifer's boyfriend Eric back into the barn. Two figures emerged, Eric and his friend Jason Tibbs. Ricky overheard them arguing, Eric's voice tense. What the hell happened? They opened the trunk. Inside, partially covered by a dark jacket, lay a girl, motionless and pale. Ricky didn't recognize her then. Jason spoke. I know what to do with her. They closed the trunk, got back in the car and drove away. Williamson stopped Hammonds. Ricky, did you see who was driving? Eric was, Hammonds confirmed. Airy cross-referenced Hammonds's description of the barn and the car with archived crime scene photos, verifying details only an eyewitness would know. Ricky, paralyzed by fear, had kept his horrific secret for 15 years. With Ricky Hammonds's testimony, Williamson and Airy started a multi-state search for Eric Freeman. They contacted federal marshals and used interstate databases. Federal Marshal Sarah Vance, assisting with the interstate search, flagged Eric Freeman's known alias and a recent traffic violation in South Carolina. The detectives immediately traveled south. They found Eric Freeman's suburban home. When they knocked, Eric opened the door. His face visibly paled at the mention of Rayna's name. His hand instinctively gripped the doorframe. He delivered a clipped, I have nothing to say, before slamming the door shut. Williamson and Airy exchanged a grim look. Eric's reaction confirmed his involvement. Ricky's testimony, though compelling, was still the word of a convicted killer, insufficient for an arrest without support. Eric's direct involvement suggested a path to a full confession, but granting immunity to an accessory to murder was a serious legal hurdle. Chief Prosecutor Elaine Norris immediately flagged the risk. We cannot offer a deal for an accessory based solely on a killer's testimony, Norris stated. This began a 5-year stalemate. For Williamson and Airy, they presented their case over a dozen times, detailing potential charges against Eric if he refused to cooperate, citing legal precedents, and emphasizing the need to break a 20-year stalemate. They also launched a secondary deep dive into Jason Tibbs's past, hoping to find independent proof. Retired Detective Ken Riley, an old mentor of Williamson's, remembered a minor assault charge against Jason Tibbs involving strangulation that had been dismissed due to witness intimidation years prior. This established a pattern of violence, strengthening the argument that Eric's fear of Jason was real, and his potential testimony invaluable. The turning point came in 2013 when a new state law was passed specifically addressing cold case immunity for accomplices who provided critical, otherwise unobtainable testimony. This legislative development provided the specific legal leverage Chief Prosecutor Norris needed to finally approve the immunity deal. In July 2013, 20 years after Rayna's murder, Eric's attorney called. A meeting was arranged in a neutral legal office. Eric confirmed the immunity agreement, clause by clause. Then, with a flood of guilt and fear, his voice a strained whisper punctuated by long, shuddering breaths, he unburdened himself of 2 decades of torment. On the afternoon of March 26th, Jason, consumed by his long-standing obsession, had called Eric demanding a ride to the clinic to talk to Rayna. Eric, unaware of Jason's sinister intentions, agreed. They drove to the clinic where Jason emerged with Rayna, their voices already raised in argument. Jason pleaded, begged Rayna to be with him, to leave Matt. Rayna's refusals were firm, clear. Jason then pressed, suggesting they drive somewhere quieter, just a short distance to finish their conversation away from her workplace. After much convincing, Rayna reluctantly agreed to get into Eric's car. Eventually, at Jason's insistence, Eric stopped the car on Fail Road. Jason and Rayna exited, their argument escalating behind the vehicle. Rayna, finally unequivocal, told Jason she wanted nothing to do with him. It was then, as Eric stepped out, intending to step in, that Jason's carefully built facade shattered. He punched Rayna, then climbed on top of her, his hands closing around her throat. "Stop, you're going to kill her," Eric cried, but Jason's eyes, cold and distant, met his. "Too late," he replied. "If I can't have her, nobody can." The confession, delivered with a chilling precision, ripped through the interview room. Williamson took careful notes, cross-referencing Eric's details with Ricky Hammond's account, ensuring alignment. Ari recorded the interview, occasionally asking for clarification on geographical details, ensuring coherence. Jason placed Rayna's body in the trunk. They drove back to Eric's girlfriend's house, where Ricky Hammonds, the frightened boy in the barn rafters, witnessed their grim argument. They didn't stay long. Jason then took Rayna's car, Eric following in his own, Rayna's body still in the trunk. Their destination, Range Road, the pond where Tracy and her father would later make the horrific discovery. There, they lifted her out, carried her to the water's edge, and when she wouldn't sink, Jason carefully weighted her down with logs. Later that night, Eric realized he still had Matt's Letterman jacket in his car. He called Jason, who came by, retrieved the jacket, and left, a final, callous act of staging the scene. Immediately following Eric's confession, Williamson secured an arrest warrant for Jason Tibbs and telephoned the Rison family, telling them, "We have major developments. We believe we know who killed Rayna." On August 23, 2013, 20 years and 5 months after Rayna's disappearance, a tactical unit was sent to Jason Tibbs's home. He was 39, married with 2 children, still living in the same house he had all those years ago. When officers knocked, Jason answered, his face showing confusion. The lead officer immediately read him his rights. Jason initially scoffed. "What is this about? My alibi's solid." Williamson stepped forward, showing Jason a photo of Eric Freeman. "Your alibi isn't solid anymore, Jason. Eric Freeman told us everything." Jason's face visibly drained of color. His carefully built world had just collapsed. He was taken into custody. At the LaPorte County Sheriff's Department, Detectives Williamson and Ari brought Jason Tibbs into an interview room. Williamson placed a folder on the table between them. "Jason, we know what happened on Fail Road. We know about the pond on Range Road." Eric laid out every detail. Jason leaned back, his gaze unwavering. "Eric's a liar. Always has been. He's trying to save his own skin." "Eric told us about the argument, Jason," Ari interjected. "How Rayna told you she wanted nothing to do with you. He told us how you hit her, how you strangled her." Jason slammed his hand on the table. "I want a lawyer. I'm not saying another word without my lawyer present." Williamson met his gaze. "You've had 20 years to tell us, Jason. 20 years for Rayna's family. A lawyer won't change what you did or what Eric saw or what Ricky Hammonds heard." Jason remained silent, his jaw tight. Williamson pushed his chair back, the scrape a harsh sound in the small room. He and Ari rose, walking to the door. Jason watched them. His eyes, once defiant, now held a flickering, trapped animal's fear. The door clicked shut, leaving him alone in the sterile room, the silence amplified by the hugeness of the truth now closing in around him. The detectives ended the interview. At a pre-trial hearing, Jason's elaborate alibi, which had seemed so solid in 1993, crumbled to dust. Jamie, now a teacher, took the stand, her voice clear as she explained, "Jason forced us into lying. He threatened us." Misty, her sister, backed up the statement. Chad, his fox-hunting accomplice, admitted Jason had told him to lie, fearing what Jason might do. Even the fox-hunting participants, now middle-aged, testified to hearing only a radio voice, never seeing him. Jason sat at the defense table, his eyes darting a flicker of panic, replacing his earlier defiance as his carefully spun web of deceit unraveled. Jason Tibbs's trial began on November 7, 2014. The Ottawa County Courthouse saw an influx of media and spectators, all focused on the conclusion of the long-standing mystery. Chief Prosecutor Elaine Norris led the prosecution. She carefully presented Eric Freeman's and Ricky Hammonds' testimonies, their accounts forming an undeniable chain of events. She used visual aids to reconstruct the timeline, recontextualizing the old physical evidence, Rayna's staged car, the discarded Letterman jacket, through the lens of the confessions. Defense attorney Richard Vance, in a last desperate attempt, made a motion to introduce Ray McCarty's past into the proceedings. Judge Patricia Chen, however, swiftly ruled against it. The court finds no direct link between Mr. McCarty's past and the current charges, Judge Chen stated, and will not allow extraneous character assassination. Jason Tibbs, maintaining a stoic facade, occasionally whispered to his attorney but offered no direct outbursts. After 5 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with its verdict. The courtroom fell silent. The foreman announced, "Guilty." A collective gasp, then quiet sobs erupted from the Rison family. Ben and Karen clutched each other, tears of relief and sorrow finally flowing after 21 agonizing years. On December 19th, Jason Tibbs was sentenced to 40 years in prison with a minimum 20-year sentence. He became eligible for parole in 2034. During the victim impact statements, Karen Rison, her voice steady but laced with decades of pain, addressed the court. "Rayna was so full of life," she stated. "She wanted to heal animals, to make the world better. Jason Tibbs stole that. He stole her future and he stole our peace." Jason's attorney launched multiple appeals, arguing undisclosed deals, forced confessions, and mishandled evidence, even attempting to reintroduce trace fibers from McCarty's car found in Rayna's hair, as of July 30th, 2019. Every appeal was denied by the appellate courts, each ruling affirming that the immunity agreement with Eric Freeman was properly handled, and the evidence against Tibbs was overwhelming. The man who had consumed Rayna with a twisted obsession would now spend his life consumed by the shadows of a prison cell. Ray McCarty, the once feared red herring, was found dead in his jail cell in February 2018 at 52 during routine rounds. He had been imprisoned for an unrelated parole violation. His death led to a wrongful death lawsuit later, alleging he had been denied necessary medications, adding another layer of complex tragedy. Justice, though agonizingly delayed, had finally arrived for Rayna Rison. The Rison family, now able to grieve with a clearer truth established, created the Rayna Rison Memorial Scholarship Fund, awarding it to a band student each year, a living tribute to the music she might have made, the life she might have lived. LaPorte, the quiet town once immune to the brutal realities of the outside world, was forever changed. Local historian Dr. Evelyn Reed, reflecting on the community's transformation, noted, "The doors here aren't left unlocked anymore." Rayna Rison's story taught us that evil can exist anywhere, and that constant watchfulness is now part of our identity. Rayna Rison's story, a tragedy born of obsession and betrayal, became a somber lesson, a permanent whisper of the evil that can lurk just beneath the surface of a seemingly perfect life. Her memory, sustained by a loving family and a community forever changed, now stands as proof of perseverance, to the quiet courage of those who refuse to let the darkness win. And in the records of a small Indiana town, the file on the young woman who wanted to be a veterinarian could finally, truly be closed.